2. I want to minister a message entitled, Now You See Me, Now You Don't. Luke chapter 2. America's best known unknown girl was the case of a girl about 22 years of age who was found shot to death. She was found shot to death on a road near Kansas City, Kansas in 1934. Through her red hair, freckled face, blue eyes, and a unique scar on her ankle, she was positively identified as 26 different women by nearly 150 people. These people claimed she had been their wife, sister, daughter, or friend. All 26 girls, however, were found alive, and so after 7 long months, Mrs. X was buried still unknown. She had been the object of the greatest series of mistaken identifications ever in the United States. I want to look with you at Luke chapter 2 at obscurity. Beginning in verse 46, it says, "And it came to pass that after 3 days they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the doctors, both hearing them and asking them questions. And all that heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. And when they saw him, they were amazed, and his mother said unto him, Why hast thou thus dealt with us? Behold, thy father and I have sought thee, sorrowing. And he said unto them, How is it that ye sought me? Wist ye not that I must be about my father's business? And they understood not the saying which he spake unto them. And he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was subject unto them. But his mother kept all these sayings in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man." I want to talk to you for a moment about the need to be noticed. This, I believe, is the desire of every human heart, that deep within every one of us is this desire to be someone. And so this is perhaps we can say man's universal desire, because the reality is that no one really pictures themselves as a nobody. Not a person sitting here in this sanctuary views themselves as someone that is useless, someone that basically is going to be here today and gone tomorrow, and no one's going to notice that they've ever lived. Here we are today, and we have over 7 billion people on planet Earth. Think about that. With this desire that I just talked about to be noticed, every one of those over 7 billion people have that desire. Every one of them has relationships with people. Every one of them has a story to tell about their life. Every one of them has experienced things or well-experienced things that they feel are meaningful and need to be told. And we can go on and on about what people desire to be known for, and this drive in which they have of not wanting to kind of exit life and never have meant or made any kind of impact at all. Because the reality is that every one of us really believes that our lives count. We don't believe that. We're just simply here and gone tomorrow, and we had no real purpose in life. So because we believe this, we are driven, so to speak, to be someone. And we do this to our children. We want them to succeed in life, and so we kind of pressure them, kind of push them to succeed, to study, to give themselves, and to think about, ahead of time. What do you want to be in life? And choose a career that you're going to actually be good at it, and you're going to be able to provide, not just simply for yourself, but for your family. And we go on, and this is the aim of everyone's life. This is what everybody wants, is they want success. They want to make their mark, so to speak, in life. It's a universal desire that we all have. The problem is that we live in a crowd. Over 7 billion people on planet Earth. And so that has a way of basically conflicting with our desire to be seen. And so this is perhaps one of the motivating factors of a child that is kind of on the disruptive side, is that maybe deep inside there's a longing to be different. There's a longing to be noticed. They just don't want to be someone sitting in a classroom, or just don't want to be, just one of the kids or one of the children. There's a desire to be noticed and a desire to be different than their siblings. This is perhaps the driving force of every generation. Every generation wants to be different. Every generation, for quite some time, has a letter. Generation X, Generation Y, whatever it might be. Every generation wants to be different than the previous ones. And so in the 50s, it was the beatniks. In the 60s, it was the hippies. And we can talk about various deviations from that in those years. And then the 70s, and then the 80s. And every generation, they all want to be different. They're all dressing differently. They don't want to be like the previous generation. So there's different hairstyles that come out, different apparel. They wear things differently. Now, ripped jeans, right? That's the style. And, back when I was a kid, that never was the style. If you wore ripped jeans, ripped clothing, it's because you were poor. Nobody wanted to give that impression, right? And then now, everybody has a tattoo. From their nose to their toes, because they want to be different. They want to tell a story. That's what one guy told me. I'm asking him about, his tats. And oh, yeah, it's a story. And he starts trying to tell me the story of every tattoo on his body. He wants to be different. Everyone wants to make their mark. Nobody wants to be the same as somebody else. But the reality is that we are. Whether you comb your hair straight up, or shave your head, whatever it might be, you are like somebody else. That bothers us. And so we go to great extremes to be different. We pierce our nose, our belly button, and every other part of our body just to be different. But the problem is that everybody's doing the same thing. God has created billions of species on the earth that you and I will never see. There are insects, and there are different types of species of insects in the ground that we will never see. They live underground, and the only reason that we know some of them do exist is because we dig them up and we see them. There are untold species of, different types of fish and different types of species that live in the water, and we'll never see them. They live in the darkest places of the ocean. We will never see them. Nevertheless, God has created them. We live surrounded by galaxies. We are but one, the Milky Way, that has billions, I believe 100 billion stars in it. And there are people in this world that seek to be seen and noticed, but they never will. They never will be noticed. They never will be seen. So this brings us to a place where we have to have the right perspective in life. If we're going to function and we're going to live a successful life, fruitful one, a life that, you know what, we won't go to our grave with regrets. We're going to have a different perspective than what the world has. We're going to have to see things in their true importance. This involves you and I being in our place. See, each one of us has a specific place and function in life. God didn't create human beings just simply for them to live and die. But God is the God that plans, and God is the God that is not wasteful. And so every life has a purpose. You're sitting here this evening, you have a purpose. You may not know what it is at the moment, but nevertheless you do have a purpose. And it's not meant for you and I just simply to waste it in drug-induced comas, or, to drown ourselves in alcohol, or to give ourselves to every whim that you and I have. But it is to fulfill the God purpose that God has for us. Because we are to contribute to a greater cause. And people do this automatically without them fully realizing that that's what they're doing. Every morning you get up and you go to work. And you go, perhaps you go to a warehouse, or you go to some kind of an assembly line, or you go to an office. You sit behind a cubicle, you are functioning, you are working, maybe you are driving an Uber, whatever it might be, you are functioning in life, and you are giving yourself to a greater cause. You may not realize that, but you are contributing as a whole so that society can function and things can go on in life, and people's needs are met. That's just the reality. And people go to school, you young person, you go to school, and whether you realize it, you're there to learn something valuable so that you can take that with you and you can begin to join the workforce and have your place in life and contribute to a greater cause. So, the problem that we face is that we have a tendency to have a very high opinion of ourselves. That's why some of us have a hard time taking particular jobs. Amazing. When I went to Orange back in '90, I tried to get a job, and so I had over 20 years of medical experience, so I'm trying to get a job in the hospital, but I'm overqualified for the openings that they have, and so they don't want to pay me and what have you. And so instead of starving, or instead of getting government handouts, I got a job selling pizzas from door to door. Whatever I could do, that's what I did to survive, to bring money into the home, to provide for my family. And, you know, I had to deal with pride, right? Because we all have this estimation of ourselves. Well, I wouldn't do that, you know, I wouldn't scrub floors, not me. Won't catch me, you know, working at Jack in the Box or somewhere. You know, we just have this high opinion of ourselves, you know, that we're all that. And so we wrestle with that because, again, there's that desire to be known. That's the desire to be noticed that we have. And so, you know, here's Jesus. And it's amazing, you know, and sometimes you can ask yourself, how in the heck did Mary and Joseph leave without their son? But it happens. I remember, you know, as a young convert in Yuma and being there in the church, you know, we had, you know, people would leave their kids. You know, we're closing up and turning off the lights, and there's little Elvis. There he is. He's under the chairs. Their parents forgot them. It happens. People get, you know, thinking about, yeah, let's go fellowship. Let's go hang out together, you know. And so mom thinks dad's got the kids. He thinks she's got the kids. They go off, and the kids are right there. And so maybe that's what happened with Jesus. But there he is, he's in the temple, and he is discussing spiritual things. He's only 12 years old, but he is amazing. He's astonishing these doctors of the law, these people, men that have given themselves to learn the Torah, and they're able to recite these scriptures and to expound on them. And Jesus is listening to them, and he's questioning them and debating with them, and they're amazed. This kid's only 12 years old. How in the heck does he understand all these things? And then Mary comes, and they find him in the temple, and he kind of gets a little bit of a scolding, you might say. You know, his response is, you know what, you guys should have known that I was about my Father's business and what have you, but Mary and Joseph, they're not having that. And so, you know, maybe Mary grabs Jesus by his ear and pulls him out of the temple. Says, you're coming home. That's possible. I don't know. I wasn't there. Neither were you. But I'd like to think that maybe she reacted like any mom. And he went with them. He obeyed them. This is the Son of God. This is the creator of all things. And he is submitting to these earthly parents. And he's going to go into obscurity. Think about that. Now, I don't know, why Jesus was debating and talking to these people in the temple. I have to think that he knew that it wasn't his time. So maybe he did it for us. For those of us that we're looking for the limelight, maybe we're looking for people to recognize how good we are and recognize our qualities and recognize our contributions. Perhaps he did it for us that have not been recognized, that no one's ever patted us on the back and said, you know what, you did a great job and what have you. But we live in obscurity. We go to work every day. We're faithful and we're doing our job right, but seemingly go unrecognized. We never get Employee of the Month. Someone else does. It's kind of buttering up to the boss. Or at least that's what we think. And obscurity, to us, seems to be a place of unimportance. The word obscurity simply means to relatively be unknown or not prominent or not famous. It also means a place of darkness or place of being hidden or dusk, even gloomy. But you see, that's where Jesus went. He left, went with mom and dad at the age of 12, and you and I hear nothing of him till he's 30 years old. See, that's where the majority of humanity live. They live in obscurity. Because the reality is that no one's ever going to write a book about me. Right? Should Jesus tarry and 40 years from now, and I've already entered it into eternity, and no one's going to go to the library to see if, who is John Zazueta? And no one's going to write a book about you either. That's the reality. And that's where the majority of people live and die. Very few are those that are famous. Right? I'm walking down, Main Street yesterday, and just to talk to people if you can find anybody. And so there's, drawings of, this colonel and that person there. And I'm reading and what they did and what have you. But you know what? Had I not read those things about them, I knew about Kit Carson, but the rest of them, had I not read about them yesterday, I wouldn't have even known they existed. Because even though they did some great things, they're not really that famous. It's not like Christopher Columbus, right? Not like Martin Luther King Jr. They're relatively unknown. And people pass by those portraits and really don't care. Is it okay to be honest? We sit in classrooms and kids do this all the time. You did it, I did it. Read about people, and in my mind, who cares? Okay? Because all we care about, for the most part, and maybe not everybody, but most of us, all we care about is us. Is my name in there? It's not? Okay. And so people function in obscurity, but they are contributing and providing something of great necessity. That's one of the things you and I need to wrestle and to allow to sink in if we're going to have the right perspective. Is that even though we don't know everyone in this city, they go to work, they function in their place, they are providing a necessary ingredient to the success of that business, the success of that company, and the success of society, whether they realize it or we realize it. So we need to perhaps not despise the day of small things. Because every place and every station in life is important. If you notice, Jesus didn't get an attitude with his mom or with his dad. He just went home with them. And people, have their own ideas as to why, he was in obscurity. Some people try to say he was in the, east, learning under some guru or whatever, But the reality is, you know what? Joseph, his father, died a little shortly after Joseph went back with them. Joseph, being the oldest, stepped into the role of breadwinner. Because it happens. Happens in our lifetime as well. Happened to my own father. His dad died at an early age, and so he drops out of high school, and begins to get a job. And he works. And he provides for his mom and his sister, and he puts his sister through college and puts her through nursing school. And so why? Because he was the oldest. He was the only male. Jesus was the oldest. Therefore, the responsibility rested on his shoulders. What did he do? He followed after his father's footsteps and was a carpenter. He worked a job. All those years, he was doing something. He used those 18 years in obscurity wisely. Wisely. In those 18 years, he was learning something about life. He's learning, and having character built in him. He's learning and going through the same things that you and I go through. He is 100% God and 100% human at the same time. And so he's using his time in obscurity wisely. Verse 52 tells us, doesn't give us any details concerning it, but it says that he increased in wisdom and favor with God and man. That means that as he's home and he's 13 and 14 years of age, he is working hard. He is being a good son. He's obedient. And people are knowing all of this. They watch him. They see how hard he works. Characters being developed. He is being known as a very wise young man, as a loving young person, all these things. He's gaining favor with men. He's gaining favor with his Father in heaven because he's doing the right thing in that moment, in that season of obscurity. Some people, when they are in obscurity, do nothing. Right? Some of us, not everyone. Let's say the people out there, nobody in here, the people out there, they waste a lot of time doing nothing. Right? I went to school and I wasted all those years because I wanted to be cool. Because I never thought that I would need an education. And that's the way some kids are. Wasting that time in obscurity, wasting time instead of diligently giving ourselves to learn something and to begin to think about a career and to make sure that when we leave high school, we at least have some kind of understanding of how to work and how to be good at saving money. But we don't. Nowadays, I believe all the sports organizations have in place individuals that help these young athletic young men that come into the professional sports to help them manage their money. Because many of them in previous times left their NBA career, their football career, baseball career, and they were dirt poor, drastically in debt, because they didn't know how to handle their money. Because all of a sudden, they got all these thousands of dollars and they're buying this car, that home, and they are spending their money like, it grows on trees. And then when it's all over, and their career is shortened because they injure themselves, or, they just weren't that good. They just didn't produce like people thought they would, and no one is hiring them. And they have nothing to fall back on. What a waste. And so it's in that place of obscurity that sometimes we fail to use that time wisely, or we become very discontent. Doesn't God see how faithful I am? Surely if Pastor was a man of God, he would know. He would know I'm the next. That's how some think. And people become discontent because they are in obscurity. Satan was this way. Even though Satan had a high position in heaven, even though he led the choir, because he was the choir, the instruments at least, his entire body was a walking instrument. Even though he was in charge of a third of the angels, he wanted more. Because he wasn't content. And that's how some people are. And because we're discontent, we do things to sabotage our future. But you see, obscurity is meant to be a place of preparation and fruitfulness. Moses, at the age of 40, tries to step into his God-given role. We know the story. He blows it. And so for 40 more years, he is in the backside of the desert. For 40 years, he's in obscurity. But it is there that he's being prepared to be the man at the age of 80 that will lead billions of people out of Egypt. It is there that he's learning how to love and to care for sheep. Jesus likens you and I as sheep. No offense to any one of us, but sheep are dumb animals. They're not smart, okay? Can't go up to a sheep and say, fetch. They're not going to do that. They don't know what you're talking about. They look at you with blank stare. Kind of like how some people look at us when we're preaching. They have to be led. If they fall down and they fall on their back, they can't get up. That's how some people are. And so, for 40 years, Moses is learning some valuable things for what he's going to be charged to do. Joseph gets those dreams. He's going to be used of God. He's so excited. But you see, he's 17 years old. And as a teenager, he is sent into Egypt. He is sold as a slave. And for 13 years, he has to deal with that. For 13 years, he is in obscurity. He's not being used of God. What he dreamt, the things that God spoke to him and reassured him, this is going to happen. It's not happening. And so finally, at the age of 30, he is lifted out of prison and given a place in a powerful position by Pharaoh. 13 years. He is seemingly wasting his time, or so it seems, but he wasn't. He was doing things and learning things and building character in his life. You know, Pastor Mitchell, he passed away when he was 91 years old. He had 50 years of great success because he went to a little town called Prescott and took a small church. And up until that time, Pastor Mitchell had been already preaching for about 10 years. He had been sent to various different small congregations that were broken, congregations that nobody else wanted to pastor. But it is in those 10 years that God was molding and shaping Pastor Mitchell for what he was going to begin to do in the 70s. And he didn't waste his time. There's no doubt in my mind that Pastor Mitchell learned some valuable things about people, about ministry, and life. And that's why he was such a success for the latter part of his life. Amen. So the question that we should ask ourselves is, what are we doing? What are you doing? What am I doing? Because there's no doubt in my mind that this church has destiny. There's no doubt in my mind that as Jesus tarries, should he tarry, and God brings souls into this congregation, that couples will be launched into the field, into their destiny. No doubt. But if that's going to take place, then we as a congregation must do something and prepare ourselves for that given moment and season when it happens. So I want to talk to you finally about finding true significance. True significance tonight comes when you and I finally recognize our true position in God. You see, the reality that for whatever reason escapes us is that we are the object of his love. You are the object of his love. See, in the beginning, God creates man. We know this because Genesis tells us that. We also know that in the beginning, man rejects God. And then God becomes a man and rescues or provides a rescue plan for mankind. He comes to this earth, he becomes a man, he lives a sinless life, and he dies for guilty mankind. For you, for me. Because we are the object of his love. We are the object of everything that he has done and ever will do. We are the principal factor, you might say. You have to realize that. Because once you've repented of your sins and we have trusted in Christ, we are joined to our significant Savior. See, the Bible is telling us about a love story where there is one that loves and he is pursuing the one that he loves. That is the very nature of God. God pursues mankind. God pursues men. He pursues women. He loves them with this unbelievable love. He'll do everything in His power. He will move mountains to bring them to salvation, to bring them into a relationship with Him, because He wants them to experience His love. See, that's powerful. Because for the life of me as a sinner, I couldn't find really hardly anybody. I couldn't find 5 people that cared about me. But God cared about me. And He orchestrated my salvation. He orchestrated yours. He put everything in motion. You know, I can look back, I see so clearly God wanting to rescue me from myself. So He allows me to go ahead and make my own decisions. I'm blowing it big time. I'm wasting my youthful years. I'm getting in trouble. I'm winding up in juvenile hall several times, being locked up as a juvenile. I'm doing everything to wreck my life. And God is just simply, okay, yeah, let Him. Don't do anything, Gabriel. Let Him. You know, he doesn't learn things very quickly. He's kind of, you know, not that smart. He allows me to jack up my life. I'm out. I'm on probation. And my mom, she's running from the police as well. We decide to leave the United States. We're going to go to Mexico. So we do that. She goes and I don't know how she did it, but she got this company to rent her this big old, you know, one of those, what are they called, mobile homes. They're on wheels. So we take it into Mexico. We never returned it. I don't even know what happened to it. But we get in trouble in Mexico. She's a witch, my mom was. And so she's battling with these other witches there in Mexico City. They're casting spells. There's all kinds of things happening. You know, me and her and my uncle, we go to this lady's house. We abduct her. You know, bring her back to the house by gunpoint. We tape her up. We've got her tied down. We're trying to get information from her. Other things happen. The police are called, and so we're arrested, and then they find out that California wants us too. So Mexico extradite, or the United States extradite us, and we are escorted back. We get off the train, because that's how they transported us, and I'm released to the custody of police. So is my mom. She goes to prison, and I'm on my way to the youth authority, to YA, to do several calendar years. I've got 7 charges against me, varying different things. And God, He's watching all this happen. So as I said, I went into the military. In those days, that's what they were allowing you to do during the Vietnam War. And so I go into the military. I end up doing 8 years because I get in trouble there too. So I've got to join, re-enlist to get money to pay off some people. And then I'm going to get out. And I get the news that my best friend, he's killed. God uses this man's death to make me change my mind. Not to go back to El Centro, but he moved to Yuma, Arizona. So I get to Yuma, Arizona in August, start working in the hospital in September, and in October, somebody from the door starts working there. And he begins to witness to me. And then in March of the following year of 81, I go out to church and I get saved. God had orchestrated all of that. And you have your own story. And God orchestrated your salvation. Why? Because He loves you. That's the only reason. because I had nothing to offer God but problems. And so when you realize your position in Christ, your position in God, it changes everything. It changes all that you and I have come to know or to believe that is true, and how we find, satisfaction and what really is significant in life. See, everyone tonight has value because you have been created by God. There's no person that has ever lived and will ever live that is the same. We are different. We are different in many ways. And so God gave Adam and Eve a job to do. They just weren't created just to kind of, live in the garden and, drink iced tea and just kind of lounge around. No, they had a purpose. Again, but getting back to what I talked about in the beginning, you have a purpose. God created you for a reason. You didn't catch God by surprise. You might have caught your parents by surprise. Maybe they didn't plan on having you. Okay? I think that's what happened to me. Because I always felt an oddball. I always felt like, my father just didn't connect. We didn't connect. I was different. And I think it's because, they didn't plan to have me. It was like I was an accident. But not in the eyes of God. And neither are you. So we have to begin to redefine true value in our life. Because true value doesn't come from someone that has a lot of money, or they have these great qualities about them, or they're seemingly of great useful service. Our true value comes from something outside of ourselves. Snowflakes, I don't know if you've ever, read about them. But I started to when I, was thinking about the scripture, that is in Job. When God questions Job and God asks him things, and Job 38:22, he asked Job if Job had ever entered into the treasures of the snow. And what is he talking about? And so as I'm reading, I'm thinking, I'm gaining information, and just like you probably already know, no snowflake is identical to the other one. They're all different. They are uniquely made by God. Why? Because He's made everything. And think about it. He's taken the time to form a snowflake. Every one of the falls, the snow that may fall here in Barstow, the snow that falls in South Dakota or North Dakota, in Alaska, all these different places, God has intricately made them, each one of them. They have a place. You know that snow, when it falls on the ground, some of you, you get all excited and go out there and build a snowman. Maybe there's enough snow to throw snowballs at each other. Go up to the mountains and, with a sled and go skiing, all these different things. And it's wonderful. But, snow, its purpose is to provide for the earth a blanket. Because as the snow covers the ground, it is creating an incubation. That the seeds from the trees and seeds that have fallen from various different, flowers or what have you that fall into the ground What the snow does, it covers them and basically provides a blanket for them so incubation can begin and occur, so that there can be fruitfulness in the future. Those seeds begin to blossom and begin to grow because of the snow. And what God is saying to Job, have you ever thought about this, that what's true in the natural is true in the spiritual, that when no one can see what's going on, when you and I are in obscurity, God is attempting to do the greatest work in our life. That when we come out of that season of obscurity, hopefully, if you and I have done correctly, if we've processed this time of obscurity correctly, that we come out of it better people. That's the treasure of the snow. And so, a blanket of snow is the work of individual snowflakes knowing their purpose in life, joining together and becoming that blanket. What's true in the natural is true in the spiritual. That if you and I are going to step into our destiny, it's you and I making the decision that even though I am in a time or a season of obscurity, I'm going to do what is necessary to become a better person. And I'm going to join myself with others, and I'm going to provide a blanket, so to speak, in our congregation so that fruitfulness can come. When we come out of this season of obscurity, we'll be ready, and there'll be seed that has been sown in our city. Why? Because we've been faithful. Even though we haven't seen all that we've wanted to see, we've still gone out. We've still believed God, and we have planted, and we're going to reap in this season of obscurity. See, you're valuable because you have intrinsic worth that comes from being designed and given purpose by God, our Creator. Remember Jeremiah? He says, I was called in my mother's womb. And the Psalm speaks about how beautiful and wonderfully you and I are formed in the womb. God is the one, He is the orchestrator, He is the originator of all of that. One man said, there's a difference between feeling significant or desired because you are needed or because someone wants you to do something for them, and being significant and desired by someone simply because he delights in you, not what you can do for him. God delights in you, not because what you can do for him. He just delights in you because he loves you. Isn't that amazing? That God loved me even when I was a sinner. When I was blaspheming His name. I was cursing God and I was doing the things that I did. He loved me when no one else did. How much more now that I'm saved and that I'm trying to do what's right? Let's bow our heads. Heads are bowed.